Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues and listeners, here we are again, another Friday late afternoon as part of our weekly show. My God, Steve, the time's going fast. It seems like it's only a couple of days every time it comes round. It's amazing, isn't it? Huh? I know they say time goes quick the older you get, so I'm beginning to worry now.
You're beginning to feel very old.
I am, mate. I am. But listen, looks good. You're outside, so you're braving the weather. What a terrible May we've had.
Well, compared to last May, Chris, which everybody will remember for the wrong reasons, but I remember it for sitting on my terrace, enjoying the sunshine, whilst arguably, of course, if my wife is listening, arguably being locked away from my wife and my son being able to get back home. But I do remember it for being the most delightful weather that I have seen in the UK for a very long time, in April and May last year, to be fair. I am sitting in London now, Chris. The weather has promised as usual to be pretty special. There's some grey clouds there, but it's okay. It's fine.
I'm just looking, so that'll be an early warning sign. If I start to see the old drops come, that'll be us to get off.
Well, actually, we are on easterly, so it's coming your way.
Yeah.
We're on easterly. I don't see any Heathrow inbounds over my house. You get them all instead, unfortunately.
Yeah. And right. So listen. Now, it's been a while since we started getting lots and lots of questions, but I started getting some now again. And, people are asking some strange things, one, which I had a little bit of a smile about, which was how close are we in a relationship? I think they're thinking that there's some romance going on there or something. But anyhow, I sorted that one out, calmed that, so we don't have to worry about reputations and things. But an interesting question.
I'm curious as to what your answer might have been, Chris.
I'll tell you offline, mate. They know for sure there's no romance going on there. But listen, seriously, one of the questions, and it comes from
for you. My taste in whiskey would trouble your bank account within a week.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to afford to date you, mate. Yeah. But on a serious note, but a lot of people do say how direct you are, how outspoken you are, and we both get similar comments from that. But quite a lot have actually said, "Have you ever thought of going into politics, Steve?" So on a serious note, you're as a member of the public, I listen to some of the things you say, and it's a shame that you don't get politicians being as direct as that. And now when you see all this rubbish being dragged through the papers, it's making them look terrible. Even that bloody whiteboard is the worst whiteboard I think I've seen for years.
Well, look, Chris, I love a whiteboard. Anybody in Qantas or Jetstar or AirAsia will tell you that Dicko, which is my nickname to most people, Dicko loves a whiteboard, and absolutely I do. I tell you what is interesting though, Chris, is yes, look, to answer the question, yes, I've been asked that question a few times. Would I go into politics? The answer is yes, I would. However, I speak rather honestly and rather candidly, and this is not always a trait well known within politicians, because they're always thinking about their next electoral risk. So when is the next cycle in the risk profile? So of course, after they're elected, they have to be, pretty. They can be pretty robust. They can be pretty candid. They can be pretty open-mouthed. When it gets to about the 2.5 year or 3 year mark, they start to batten down the hatches again and be a little bit more quieter about some of their views. When it gets to the year 4 mark, so as we know in most countries, elections are on 4 or 5 year terms.
Yeah.
Elected politicians, they then tend to sort of lock down and they try to conform. Unfortunately, I wouldn't conform, so I would probably be a one-term politician. The reality is, Chris, that you might try to sort of use some sound bites to engage the people. But actually, throughout this, what I want to be is honest, and what I have seen is a massive lack of honesty, massive amounts of dishonesty, and dishonest politicians. So I probably wouldn't get very far in politics because of my tongue. But I think politics is changing, Chris. In our business alone, I mean, I've seen lots of politicians occupying the Director General role of IATA, for example. these were career politicians, Italians and French folks that really were, I mean, pretty miserable, dishonest, neutral people that didn't want to make any change whatsoever for fear of rocking the boat. And now we've seen a firebrand like Willie Walsh become the IATA DG. So look, I would say, Chris, anything is possible.
Yeah, I'd like to say that's an interview I'd like to have, you and Willie. That would be a great one. Now, the point
I'm happy for you to facilitate that with Willie and I. No issue.
Yeah, no, I'd love to do that one actually. But
it's probably on board, right? Himself in this grey clouds.
No, I might actually try that. Yeah,
you can talk to Willie. Yeah.
Now, another question, Steve, that came similar and came as supplementary to the politician one was, I got a question where it said we're so used to politicians doing what they think will keep them in favour and doing what they'll do with regard to the length of their tenure, which is what you've just covered. Now, what they're also saying now is that will management start to also change their approach and do things that are the right things for the right reasons at the right time, rather than just be revenue focused and target driven? And they're talking about, bonuses and why do so many things get done over and above things that suddenly and dramatically happen and then have a major impact on the business. So some of the things they're talking about were safety related, obviously talking about e-commerce and undeclared dangerous goods and lithium batteries and all these issues. And the point they're making is, why do people not address that directly once and for all and stop it from being such a disease within the industry because of the revenue generation that's associated with it?
Look, you and I had a conversation only half an hour ago about a similar thread and similar kind of set of challenges that we've got and similar set of expectations that have to be managed on both sides.
Yep.
Whether it be the shipper, whether it be the carrier, whether it be the ground handler, or whether it be the regulator. Is that not? I think we spoke about that only.
We did
less than an hour ago.
We did.
For client purposes. Now, look, the reality is, Chris, money talks. Make no bones about it.
Yeah.
If we want to try to pretend that safety is always number one, well, we can bullshit ourselves. We can bullshit our colleagues. We can bullshit our employer, and we can bullshit the community in which we work. The reality is that's wrong. What matters is that we've got a sustainable model that brings in revenue, that generates profitability. Those two are far in front of anything else and always have been. So we can talk safety first all we like, and we've said this before, but that is a bullshit analogy to express somebody's contrite expression of safety and security and compliance being more important than anything else. We know, however, that businesses exist to be profitable. They exist to generate returns to their shareholders.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not about safety first. So whoever tells you that is lying. Now, the first thing you've got to then get away from is accepting or acknowledging that safety is first, because safety is not first. Profitability and business existence will always come before safety. However, as a mantra, safety first sounds good. So they use it to con others into letting others think and their customers think they always think about safety first. They do not. I've never met a business that only thinks about safety more than profitability. Because if we wanted to do the most safe business, we would ground all airplanes. We would stop all cargo delivery. We would stop all accepted. We'd stop all trains. Sorry, that's Southwest Railway just next to my apartment going down the road there, if you hear that train. But we would stop trains operating. So if we wanted safety first, we wouldn't do anything else.
Yep. And so then it comes down to managing the acceptable risk.
Managing risk. So it's all about risk management. It's about risk management, maybe second to profitability.
Yeah.
Right. So what we have to do is I guess get the balance right. So yes, we want to be profitable. Yes, shareholders put in their heart. I mean, shareholders always get a hard time. I've never understood this. Why shareholders and investors get such a hard time from everybody, particularly the Joe public that that complain about shareholders making dividends and returns. I've always found that a bit odd. Yeah, but they've staked their house, or they staked their entire sort of future on a business.
Yeah, and the way somebody else runs it.
Exactly. So that's nonsense anyway. Mostly the uneducated think that. What I would say, Chris, is very straightforward. It's about accepting a level of risk that is in profile with your overall business methodology. So clearly, there are some businesses that accept much higher risk. Running a nuclear power station, as some of this lot does in the UK, is a pretty high risk business. The returns, therefore, for that business should be commensurate with the risk. They should be making 70, 80% margins on their running that business, in my view.
Yeah.
Running a chip shop or an ice cream van is a pretty low risk business, and therefore your margins might be 5 or 10%. However, you probably find it's the other way around. The nuclear power station operator makes 10% margin, and the ice cream van is probably on the 70% margins, I would suspect. So in our business, in aviation, who's got the highest risk profile? Who has to accept the highest risk? Who has to therefore put in place the insurances, the policies, the processes, the mitigations, the training, the structures, the organization to maintain that? It's the airline more often than not. And therefore, they've got to protect against all of these risks that they're exposed to around others. So when it comes to people back to your point, Chris, around people that inject shipments, or for example, into our business. So let's say a courier firm that injects shipments into our industry and our business that we, as an industry, have to accept. Is it not them that carries some of the burden of that risk mitigation to ensure we know where it's coming from, we know who sent it, we know the risk profile, it's been screened to this standard, it's for this dot. Instead, as always, Chris, it seems to be the airline that takes the lion's share of managing out that risk. And that, in my view, is expensive, it's costly, it's wrong. So what I would prefer, back to your question, is to have a kind of a universal set of kind of, multilateral approach to risk management within our industry.
Yeah, and it's definitely putting the emphasis now on correct risk and identifying what real worst case scenarios are. Now, to end the question, what was then added was, if you were put in a position where you had to reduce the amount of the end revenue, which would affect you as the head of the business, but if you did reduce it, you also then focused on some other issues that had more sustainable benefit long term, would you go for the short term gain, or would you go for the long term?
I've never been short termist. I would much rather have been in a different business. I wouldn't be working in aviation if I was short term. This is a long term play, Chris. So look, like anything, whether I'm consulting and advising clients, or I'm in an executive role working for my employer, it's always about the long-term return. It's always about the long-term play. It's never about short-termist views. Short-termist views carry much more risk. They carry much more kind of, let's say, kind of volatility around that sort of, and they engender bad behaviors. What we want is the right cultural dynamic, the right long-term setup, the right DNA within an organization. If you're bringing people through an organization thinking short-termist, you don't get the DNA, you don't get the culture, you don't get the long-term view. You get people that are there to make maybe quick returns, although I haven't seen many quick returns in our industry in years, to be honest with you. But no, I'm certainly a long-termist. I'm much more a kind of a property investor than a Bitcoin investor, Chris.
Right, clear as a bell there. Clear as a bell. Now, another question, and this comes from somebody who said that they didn't want to mention their company, but what they're noticing now is that people are being asked to do things quicker than they were before, more than they ever were before, and there's a lot more errors being made, and there's a lot more fatigue and stress, and that they're not sure that management are paying attention to it, and they're worried that it's going to create an awful lot of bigger and worse problems moving forward. So the question is, why is this happening, and why are people allowing this to be something that's seen to be growing and getting worse?
So I'm sorry to be a bit of a politician here, back to the very first questioner of this place. But look, there's a fine balance to be had, Chris, between, so if you imagine what we've gone through in the last 12 months, 15 months, since March last year, predominantly in Europe, a little bit earlier in Asia, but March last year, we're in a space now where, we have transformed our lives personally, education of our children, the way we engage with one another, the way we interact with one another, how we think about risk, how we accept kind of the let's call it the transient risk, or the transferring sort of disease or healthcare issues to one another. How we think about the state's role in our lives. Some might think the state should be heavily involved. Some might think the state should not be involved. I won't tell you which end of the spectrum I'm on. You probably know already. How much money people expect to earn or to have an income, or we talk about universal basic incomes nowadays. Things that were never mentioned before, right? So our lives have changed dramatically in the last. So what I would say, Chris, on that vein, that same vein or same train of thought is, look, I accept that businesses have had to respond, more quickly, more dynamically than they may have ever done before. So within our aviation space, and accepting the question is from a proponent of aviation or an aviation person, Chris never tells me who the questioner is, by the way. So I don't know if that's protect me.
No. We used to because but
why don't we now? Well, GDPR and bollocks.
No. I've got two, and the thing is not to discourage, but I've got two people who said that they're very interested to find out what your personal views are, and mine as well, because they were saying that we're discussing things that are happening, but we're not sticking to our own opinion.
I'm being slightly obtuse, as you would never expect me to be. But look, it's not about actually responding to the person. It's about responding in general to the set of circumstances. What I would say is this: our industry has gone through all of the change that we recognise. Our lifestyles, our peoples that work in it, have gone through all the changes that I mentioned at a macro level. At a micro level, family life has changed, business life has changed, the dynamic and available amount of staff has changed. We've had to deliver the same services to a large extent with fewer people. We've had to deliver the same amount of production with few available resources. And what I would say is a lot of lazy businesses, lazy in the sense of, I'm not being rude in this aspect, but lazy businesses who had lazy margins of less than 5%. Now that is the handling sector, Chris. Is a lot of our logistics business at space. So what I've always tried to do is ensure that the businesses that I've consulted to or advised or that I've worked for have decent and reasonable margins. And those margins should be aligned with your supply chain, with your service partners, with others. So where people are taking the piss out of you, and suppliers have been able to generate from their customers much higher margins than you yourself are earning, I've always thought that's a bit of a disconnect. Why would I work some 25% margin on their business, but as a ground handler at Menzies or Swissport or WFS, I'm making a sub 10% margin, which are those kind of space. Right?
No, I totally agree.
So what my advice would be is this: look, we have already had to adapt to smarter, better, more innovative, clever ways of working. That does not mean one should be applying more pressure or exerting more stress or more workplace pressures that were not there before. What we should be doing is upskilling the employee to become less lazy, to look at alternative ways of working, to look at alternative ways of generating better production, looking at alternative ways of using technology and innovation in some better returns. It means that we got to get off our ass and work a bit harder and not sit on our laurels and sit on our hands getting fat and happy. Nobody will get fat and happy in our industry for the next 3 to 5 years, I suspect, Chris. This will be all hands to the pump. It'll be all hands on deck, and we will all have to work harder and smarter. But if we introduce additional workforce pressures or strains or stresses, I think that's not a wise move. what an employer should be doing is assessing the level of change and the pace of change with the effect on its workforce. And our workforce now, Chris, is the most fundamentally important thing that we've got. It's the biggest toolbox. It's the biggest tool in our toolbox, the biggest asset in our arsenal. You know, we don't have other ways of recognizing this. And I think our people, with all of those personal stresses they've been through in the last 12 months, 15 months, we need to kind of go easy on the pace of change. But we need to also have an end game, and that end game might well be levels of automation or sophistication or delivery that we've never seen before.
And it's ironic, isn't it, that, you know, hospitality, everything that we've been so looking forward to getting back out to and involved with, as an industry, they're struggling now to find people and good people. And, you know, so many people that were in it are thinking to themselves, I don't want to be back in there again. Plus all the other restrictions now with tablets and face masks and not having that personal interaction again. I mean, it's a tough one to reboot, huh?
It is a tough one to reboot, Chris. But look, there are always, what I always say is, there are always good jobs for good people.
Yeah, that's true enough.
Very rarely do I find, you know, you typically don't find lazy people with a lack of sort of aptitude in big senior important roles in FTSE 100, FTSE 250 companies. You generally find kind of go-getters there. People that are fire in their belly. And, you know, during a change like this, Chris, I think we need some more fire in the belly.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
If you're not willing to put that fire in your belly, or find the fire in belly, or you don't already have the fire in your belly, you should probably go and do something else. Frankly, sorry to say, but the reality is, Chris, we need people now with more fire in their belly than ever before. And you need to therefore think about the impact of your working on your colleagues and the impact of your inputs on your profession, the impact of your business on our industry. And I'd say if you don't want to do that, then you're probably not in the right place, and maybe consider an alternative employment.
No, but that, like you said, the fire in the belly, the engagement, the passion, the genuine enthusiasm is so important.
The very first podcast we did, I remember it was about me and Skylight Aviation and how I started my business. And one of the things you asked me was how I recruit people or how I bring people into the business. I've never recruited on experience, ever. Experience to me means zero, because experience is often 1 year to
kept for many years, to
a 25 multiple or 30 multiple or whatever. What I've always recruited on are skills, competence, and aptitude. And more often than not, aptitude is the biggest one. So if I had to weight them, it'd be heavily weighted towards aptitude over skill competence. Because aptitude tells you everything you need to know about somebody's ability to contribute to your organization, to your shared outcomes, and to your objectives.
I agree. I agree with you. Aptitude, yes, and attitude. And we were talking yesterday on a podcast, myself and Salem, and it was with David Van Miller, and he was talking about attitude, and he was saying one of the things that you have to be every day is almost content and happy with what you're doing. And if you've got the right attitude and a positive attitude, he said, it doesn't just mean that you go around smiling everywhere and saying yes, 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 but it means that you don't let others burden your performance or your impact on others' performance by what they've done in a negative way, because then you're letting them win. And it was getting, it was getting good and deep, but it made a lot of sense. Now, Steve, last and a big general question. What would you do first as the highest priority if you were responsible for a handling company in today's pressurized situation and with the next couple of years and wanting to come out of it as a market leader? What areas would you be focusing on more than ever before?
Well, that's a great extension to my previous answer, Chris, because my first one is talent. So the first one has to be, who do I have around the top table? Who do I have around me that can make decisions? Who do I have around me that feels empowered by me or the board or whomever? but feels empowered to make decisions and can contribute meaningfully and materially to the successes of the organisation and the objectives agreed by the board. So let's accept the board have delivered that message. The second thing, Chris, then, is to ensure that they have the right tools to do their job. So the right level of delegated authority. That means me, or, you know, if I was hypothetically in this role, that means me not being in the weeds, because actually sometimes you've got to give delegated authority to your people. You've got to trust them. You've got to give them the empowerment, and you've got to let them get on with the gig. So having somebody, so accepting that you've got the right talent and competence and aptitude at the first level is important.
Yep.
Accept that you've got the right processes and structures and delegated authority. And within big organizations, Chris, that's a big talking point. Delegated authorities takes hours at board or shareholder level to agree. These are not small things that I mentioned. You know, that's really important. So that would be the second thing. The third thing is ensuring that that there's a real focus on cost base, production, and service. And actually, the organizations that I've always wanted to work for. Now, I was once a union member, as a member of the TWGU, as it was.
Oh yes.
TGW, is it? Transport General Workers Union.
Yeah, that's it.
Many years ago. So, as I said to you before, there's a place for unions, and unions are there to create equilibrium between employer and employee. But what I'd want to do, Chris, is engender a spirit of not requiring a unionized workforce. I'd want the right conversations, the right transparency, the right discussions, the right level of kind of engagement between the employee and the employer, such that I could engender better production, better resourcing, better standards, to ultimately deliver a better product and a better set of service outcomes to a customer base. That's what I'd focus on. Yeah.
And what you mentioned in there about unions and things, like so many times you hear people saying, yeah, no, we're fighting against management, or we're going against management. They should be working with, or they should be, like, you know, exchanging ideas with. It's even the wrong way that it's being spoken about. And especially now, you know, like you said, transparency, communication, collaboration, all those nice words, but really people now need to put it into practice.
No, but I hate nice words without substance, Chris. The words, when I say, I mean, I'm really genuine about this. It's got to have substance. It's got to have breadth. It's got to have, you know, recognition that we are in a place that requires material change, a sustainable new approach, and delivery. Don't talk wanky. Sorry for my language, Chris. I'll apologize in advance. So listen.
I'll put it down to the wind, mate. I'll put it down to the wind. I heard you say you were getting your hanky out. So carry on, no problem.
Do not talk wanky consultant language. Do not talk board buzzwords, and do not talk extravagant employee kind of promises. Talk about simple delivery, engaged workforce, and the real kind of prospects of delivering a customer product that is meaningful. And that's what matters, and that's what will win the customers. So if this is about a handler, those are the things I think that matter to me and that I would take on. I don't want any employment offers as a result of this podcast. Thank you very much. Busy enough for.
Oh, fair enough. And then just an offshoot of that, what people are saying is that if you now look at the market, this last year or so has been very, very creative and innovative, and people have produced certain tools and certain apps and certain programs that can help the business. Would you start to look more now at a plug and play, you know, a selection, rather than try and do things all yourself in-house?
I haven't thought anything otherwise, Chris, ever.
Exactly. If it's there, take it now, because doing things in-house take far too long.
Supply chain and procurement has always been take the best business and the best supplier at the right price, arguably, for the vertical and for the product. Don't go multilateral, don't go horizontal, don't build breadth and trying to build in all these capabilities within one supplier. Always go for best in market, best in class, in the vertical in which they operate. That's it. That's very simple.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. Now, something that's quite important. I read that Heathrow has lost the duty free option now.
I'm just sitting in the rain here for those that can't see me on the screen. So if you're listening on Spotify, I apologize. But on the YouTube version, we have quite heavy rain now arrived in London.
Yeah, and I thought it was coming, and it's getting darker and darker as it's about. Oh.
It's heading your way, Chris. Sorry, because of that, I missed your question. You'll have to ask it.
The last question was about the different possibilities with duty free. Very good. Hey? Men in black and white.
So what about the possibilities of duty free?
Well, what a terrible thing now. If the old expectations of getting a good bottle of duty free in and out of the, when you're traveling, if that goes now, it's going to be a little bit of a disappointment to a lot of people.
Why? We haven't had that in the UK. We haven't had that since the 1970s. However, I got it coming back from Spain last week for the first time ever in my life. So I got duty. So what's your point?
No, it was just something that I was reading about how these concessions and how these opportunities with duty free were changing and what would it mean?
It's great to be out of Europe because rather than pay 35 euros for a bottle of gin, it is quite a nice bottle of gin at 35 euros. I paid 22, which I was very chuffed about leaving Spain to come back to the UK with.
Very good, very good. And on that note, Steve, last question is why on earth, and this is an open question, why on earth does it create so much confusion with the travel advice and the traffic light system? What on earth is going on?
I haven't supported the government often on this podcast, as you well know, Chris. Despite being a Conservative and a Tory voter, I've challenged them and critiqued them where I thought was appropriate. Must say the vaccine program has gone exceptionally well. Not to deviate from your question, but that is one thing we've done. Well, in the world, I think, Chris is
no, it's incredible.
On that point, I do think. Look, there are some good questions you've asked about this, Chris. The green list will change.
Yeah.
It will change from now and then, and it will move up and down. Countries move from green to amber and amber to green. What we've got to do is more certainty about it. But I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. Sadly, as we still go through the vaccine program across most of Europe. Now, the Asia doesn't really matter because Asia is so badly behind in vaccinations. It's untrue. Australia and New Zealand are so badly behind in vaccinations. Yeah. Less than 20% in Australia, country I used to live in. I'm so disappointed with Australia. It's such a progressive nation, such a disappointment to see that. And all these anti-vaxxers, as Lord Lloyd Webber himself, that famous composer and musician said, being an anti-vaxxer is akin to being a drink driver. You're irresponsible and you risk killing people.
That's pretty clear.
It's very simple, Chris. Get the vaccine, get vaccinated, go travel and enjoy yourself. But accept the advice might change between when you leave and when you return. And that's nothing. I never changed on that since last year. I always said that. If you go overseas and the advice changes, don't bloody complain when you come back, you're going in quarantine. Because I've got not one iota of sympathy for you. I travel a lot. I still travel, as you know. I'm compliant. I follow all the bloody rules. And I've had more things up my nose in the last year than I think I've ever had in my life because of tests.
I think I'm tempted, but I'm not going to say anything to that apart from...
Anyway,
as always,
tomorrow I'm heading back to Spain. Thank God, no PCR test required, no quarantine in Spain, a house there, beautiful sunshine, compared to this.
Yeah.
When our podcast tomorrow, I'll be on a flight and I'll be very happy and I enjoy flying and I never want to give up flying. I think it's extremely safe and we should all do it very soon. Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I'll be following you in about a week's time. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Take care. So next week, hopefully might be from Spain. And as always, mate, it's a great pleasure. Now that we know that you're clearly going to be, in number 10 in a few years to come.
I feel much more at ease going to bed tonight.
For one term, of course.
Yeah, for one term. But one term will be enough, mate. It'll be enjoyable and entertaining, I'm sure. All right, lovely boy. Take care and speak to you next week. Always a pleasure.
Bye-bye. Thanks
Cheers.
a lot.
Bye.
Bye.